Call the Board of Examiners meeting. Members are present. Madam Secretary, can you hear us loud and clear in Las Vegas?
Yes, I can, Governor. Good morning.
Good morning. And listen, everybody, this is our new and improved audio system. So thank you, Buildings and Grounds, for getting that dialed in. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 2, public comment. Is there any member of the public present in Carson City that would like to provide public comment to the board? I hear and see none. Is there anyone present in Las Vegas that would like to provide public comment to the board?
No, there is nobody here that wishes to make a public comment, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll move to agenda item number 3, which is the 14th. Have the members had an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any changes? The Attorney General has moved to approve the minutes of November 14, 2017. Is there a second?
I second it, Governor.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I hear none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. We will move on to agenda item number 4, which is a request for an allocation from the Reserve for Statutory Contingency account by the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Division of Forestry. Mr. Nix, good morning.
Good morning, Governor and members of the board. Item 4 is a request for allocation from the Reserve for Statutory Contingency account, the Forestry Division of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Pursuant to NRS 353.264, Section 2B1, the division is requesting to cover actual and projected costs of emergency responses to protect life and property under NRS Chapter 472 due to an unusually active fire, which currently ranks as the third most severe on state record. This request is the second part of funding firefighter activities for FY18. The Interim Finance Committee approved work programs at the October IFC meeting using the wildfire protection program reserves to cover projected expenses through December. This request is intended to cover the currently projected expenditures through the end of the fiscal year. Should this amount be insufficient to cover firefighting costs incurred through June, the division will look to a request of the IFC contingency funds for the balance. The reserve for the statutory contingency currently has a balance of $2.88 million for the balance of the 2018 to 2019 biennium. Representatives from the division are available to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Ms. Casey, good morning. I'm not sure what's going to be included in your presentation, but I did want to read part of the memo that you authored to really put things in perspective as to the need for this agenda item. So I'm going to read verbatim from this memo. It says, to date, in 2017, there have been 753 fires across Nevada with the total area burned exceeding 1.2 million acres. Of these 753 fires, 152 originated on land within the division's responsibility, which is almost 2 times the 5-year average. Of the 1.2 million acres burned, 331,392 were NDF's responsibility, which is over 13 times the 5-year average. Wildland fire costs and acreages currently are exceeding averages nationwide. The increase comes from increased fuel loads and a longer fire season. In the past, fire seasons averaged 5 months, but are now averaging 7 to 9 months nationwide. The cost of fighting wildland fires is initially borne by the jurisdictional agency at the point of origin. The agency then seeks reimbursement through cost share agreements with all other responsible jurisdictional agencies. So, Ms. Casey, I hope I didn't steal your presentation, but I just wanted to thank you and all the men and women associated with you at NDF, because you really have been heroic during this fire season. And I know, and I would ask that maybe you could give some perspective as to what's going on in California and the assistance we're providing there. But truly, it's been a really difficult year, and you have answered the call at every moment, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, Mr. Governor, members of the committee. For the record, Casey. That was my speech, so thank you for that. Although the numbers have changed slightly. There were 760 fires to date in the state. We're still at 1.2 million, a little over 1.2 million acres. One of the things I would add is the California response. A lot of these projections that we did going forward did not predict some of the two fire sieges that had happened in California. The first one in October, we sent over about 150 employees. That was inmate crews and full-time staff. Currently, we have 2 Type 3 engines and 6 conservation camps in California, primarily on the Thomas Fire, trying to battle those flames. That's, again, another about 150 employees plus 7 from NDOC. So we're just trying to help them as they've helped us many times in the past. It has been a hard year for us. As you had mentioned, 3rd highest on record from an acres perspective, probably the highest on record from a cost perspective. We were one of the, so you could call it lucky or unlucky, first states out of in the West that had a fire siege. So we had access to a lot more aircraft and support than we normally would have had the other states had a similar situation. So we were lucky to keep it at 1.2 million acres with the fuel loads that we have and will continue to see in the future fire season. So that's all I would add. And I would like to thank quickly the Governor's Finance Office and LCB staff for helping us with all the solutions we've had to come up with this year to get this thing right and keep responding to incidents that keep coming up.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. And just in terms of process, so we've been the beneficiary of California sending crews. We send them. So at the end of the year, if it ever comes in terms of the fire season, is there a true-up? And if more resources are sent from one place to the other, will Nevada then have to pay California or California help reimburse Nevada?
Yeah, that's how it works throughout the fire season. So we're currently in the process of adjudicating any bills that come in, and they're doing the same thing. So we're processing bills, they're processing bills. That goes for the Forest Service, the BLM, CAL FIRE, any state that we've helped respond to. And then at the end of the year, we're billing, they're billing. Currently, we're looking at what the difference would be, and then we'll move forward with payments. We haven't seen what we know is the bills that were our responsibility right out of the chute, which is any fire that started on our jurisdiction. There are many others that we will have a cost share in, and we haven't seen the cost of those yet. Those will be coming in as the federal government gets to their billing process.
And I know maybe it's too early to have an estimate. We just don't want to have a big surprise. Do you know kind of where it is in terms of what that reimbursement looks like?
As far as receivables, right, currently we're at $1.6 million in receivables out. That's what we've billed to go out, and that number fluctuates daily as we're bringing money in. Year to date, we've brought in about $400,000. So some things are dropping off, other things are adding on as we're getting more and more bills. So that's currently what we have, but then we just got a big bill from California again, about $500,000 that wasn't factored into that. It's in the adjudication process. So the numbers just kind of fluctuate. We attach those numbers as current as they are to all of these work programs.
All right, thank you. And right now, I don't want to jinx anything, but all calm in Nevada.
Yes.
All right. Questions from other board members with regard to agenda item number 4?
Governor, this is Barbara Skaski. I would just like to echo your comments and thank the Forestry Division for all their hard work and everything that they've done. I know it hasn't been easy, and just watching what we've gone through and then watching what California's gone through, we are really lucky, very lucky for the responders that we have with the firefighters in the Division of Forestry. So thank you so much.
Thank you all, and I will bring that back to the agency and tell them as well.
And our thoughts and prayers are with what's happening in California. Could you give a kind of a sense of the magnitude of that fire that's happening right now?
I did speak to Bob Roper, previous state forester. His home was actually threatened, and he was mandatorily evacuated in one of the fires. And from all accounts that we've heard over there, this is fire like they've never seen it. They've had Santa Ana winds in the past. They've never had fuel loads like this, and fire moving quite at the pace that they've seen this fire moving in. And what you saw in October and this current one is the amount of structures, usually it will stop at the brink of town. It did not stop at the brink of town. I think 5,700 was the structure total in the last siege. It's quite high, so it's very devastating for the state of California. All of their resources are tapped. So it's really important and critical for us all to help them. They've got resources from Canada, from New Zealand, from all over the world actually helping them to fight fire. And it's just not something we've seen in the past, but we noticed that also this year in the state of Nevada, watching fire move faster than we've seen it. So looking at historical firefighting tactics and techniques, we've had to change our way of fighting fire, and I think that's something that we will see continue into the future.
And I know we're going a little astray here, but do you attribute that to the amount of the fuel load as a result of the wet winter that we had?
Definitely to the amount of cheatgrass that we have, the type of grasses that come with a wet winter, but also the overstocking of our forests and the dead and decadent vegetation that just hasn't been cleared in a lot of our acreages. So that's a part of it. Part of it is probably just being warmer and drier and winds coming. We always have winds, but having a little bit stronger wind forces, a lot of different factors.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? If there are none, Chair will accept a motion to approve the request for an allocation from the Reserve for Statutory Contingency account by the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Division of Forestry in the sum of $1,950,000.
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
I second it, Governor.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Casey. Good luck to you. Move to agenda item number 5, which is an authorization to contract with a current and/or former state employee. Mr. Nix.
Item 5 is a request to contract with a current and/or former employee pursuant to NRS 333.705, subsection 1. Assembly Bill 466 from the 2017 legislature revised requirements for these requests to be approved by the Board of Examiners. As long as the former employee is not receiving retirement benefits from the Public Employees Retirement System during the duration of the contract, a former employee may provide services to state agencies without the approval of the board. This request is from the Department of Agriculture to contract with a former employee to provide technical assistance and training on federal grants managed by the department. The former employee, who retired in September of 2017, would work between 10 and 20 hours per week through March 2nd, and then less than 8 hours per month through the remainder of the fiscal year at a rate of $31.32 per hour. Representatives from the departments are available to answer any questions the board may have.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Deborah Crowley, Finance Administrator for the Department of Agriculture.
And Ms. Crowley, I really don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward. The only comment that I would have is typically we train before the person leaves so they don't have to come back. Is there a plan to get that done?
Yes, actually, at the time we requested the overlap, we weren't aware that the person that was going to be hired was an internal person. So the actual, we promoted from within, so there really wasn't much training that was able to occur. But in addition to training on a lot of the federal reporting requirements, there are other projects that, special projects that this individual would assist in, such as audits, federal audits, and just assisting with the new budgets beginning, just to help the incumbents understand some of the programs.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Board members, any other questions for Ms. Crowley? Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there are no further questions, the chair will accept a motion to authorize the contract with a current and/or former state employee as presented in agenda item number 5.
Move to approve.
The Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
I
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hear none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. We'll move to agenda item number 6, which is a request for approval to join or use other government's contracts. This one is by the Department of Health and Human Services, Welfare and Support Services. Mr. Nix.
Item 6 is a request to join or use other government's contracts. NAC 333.175 allows the state to participate in the award of a contract on a multi-state basis if the contract is awarded by a competitive selection, properly advertised and in the best interest of the state as determined by the Administrator of State Purchasing. While these requests are similar to contracts, they use the terms and conditions negotiated by the contracting government with the vendor, which may or may not be the same as the state's terms and conditions. This request from the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Welfare and Support Services, seeks approval to join a State of Delaware Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Child Support Services contract with Informatics Incorporated to provide an electronic application to assist the collection and disbursement of child support payments to custodial parents. The work order for this contract is $1,100,000 through March 31st, 2020.
Mr. Fisher, good morning.
Good morning, Governor, members of the board. For the record, my name is Steve Fisher. I'm the Administrator for the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. And I have with me this morning Nova Murray. She's Deputy Administrator for the division. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to Nova to give you kind of a brief explanation of the contract and a little background on the contract, and then we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, members of the board. Governor Sandoval. Nova Murray, for the record. I'm the Deputy Administrator with Welfare. This contract provides replacement of the current electronic application that we use to disperse our child support payments. The contract also includes additional functionality enabling the state to process payments to custodial parents more timely and efficiently. The agency chose to enter into a cooperative contracting opportunity, and in our agency we call it a joinder, through the state of Delaware. The Delaware RFP solution complies with NAC 333 and meets all the legal requirements for procurement in Nevada. The joinder was an excellent solution for us because we had already submitted an RFP for this process. Informatics was the winner of that bid. We made it all the way to BOE, and we submitted a proposal in the budget for the 2017 legislative session, and it contradicted it. It would not have required a replacement of our system the way that budget was submitted. During the session, that budget proposal was eliminated, so we are back to going through this process to select a vendor. This is a good choice because Delaware already did the RFP process, Nevada already did the RFP process, and it just makes sense to go ahead and join on that and not go through the RFP again. So, thank you.
Okay, you nailed it. I have no questions. Well done.
Thank you.
And board members, any other questions?
None, Governor.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to add, Mr. Fisher?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. If there are no questions, the chair will accept a motion to approve the request to join or use the other government's contracts by the Department of Health and Human Services, Welfare and Support Services Administration in the amount of $1.1 million is presented in agenda item number 6.
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
There's a second, Governor.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or comments on the motion? I hear none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, request for approval to pay a stale claim from the stale claims account. We have 4 of those. Mr. Nix.
Item 7 includes 4 requests to pay late invoices pursuant to NRS 353.097. The first request is from the Department of Transportation to pay 2 invoices from the CA Group totaling $67,676 for consultant design services for the signs and striping. The invoices were received by the department prior to the cutoff for processing fiscal year 2017 transactions, but were not processed timely. Funds in this program did not balance forward, and the department did revert sufficient funds to cover the cost of this claim. This claim will be paid from the Highway Sale Funds Claims account. The second request is also from the Department of Transportation to pay $74,157.86 to the Desert Research Institute for continuous real-time quality data systems monitoring and public presentations. The invoice was received by the department after the cutoff for processing fiscal year 2017 transactions. Funds in this program did not balance forward, and the department did revert sufficient funds to cover the cost of this claim. This claim will be paid from the Highway Fund Stale Claims account. The third request is from the Department of Health and Human Services Division of Aging and Disability Services to pay $71,386.02 to Trinity Services for the Jobs and Day Training Program. The invoice was received by the division after the cutoff for processing fiscal year 2017 transactions. Funds in this program did not balance forward, and the department did revert sufficient funds to cover the costs of this claim. The claim will be paid from the Stale Claims account. The fourth request is from the Public Employees Benefits Program to pay $176,469.34 to HealthScope benefits for an increase to the per participant per month fees for PEB participants located in or accessing medical services out of state. This request is the result of a retroactive contract amendment to increase the fees retroactive to July 1st, 2016. The increase was agreed to between the parties prior to the effective date, but was not properly revised in the original contract amendment. This item relates to contract number 50 under agenda item 11. Representatives from the departments are available to answer any questions the board may have regarding the individual claims.
Thank you very much. Board, I have no questions. Board members, any questions with regard to the stale claims presented in agenda item number 7?
No questions, Governor.
No questions, Governor, thank you.
Given that there are no questions, the chair will accept a motion to approve the stale claims from the stale claims account as presented in agenda item 7A, B, C, and D.
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second, Governor.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I hear none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. We will move to agenda item number 8, which is the Department of Administration's Victims of Crime Fund Fiscal Year 2018 First Quarter Revenue Report and recommendations for fiscal year 2018 Second Quarter anticipated expenses.
Pursuant to NRS 217.260, the Board of Examiners is required to estimate the available revenue and anticipated claims costs for the State Victims of Crime Program. This item includes a report on the claims paid in the first quarter of fiscal year 2018 and a recommendation to pay priority 1, 2, and 3 claims at 100% for the second quarter of fiscal year 2018. The program anticipates having a reserve at the end of the second quarter of fiscal year 18 of approximately $7.8 million after covering all expenses and a 45-day operating reserve, which is a decrease of approximately $3.9 million from the projected reserves of $11.7 million at the end of the first quarter. This decrease is due to the number of claims filed subsequent to the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival mass casualty event of October 1st. The decrease to the reserve is a concern, but the agency representatives expect to obtain additional federal funding to offset the expenses associated with the October 1st event. Given additional federal funding for the mass casualty event, the $7.8 million should be a reasonable reserve for the program. However, if additional grant funding is not received, the board may need to consider reducing the percentage of the approved amounts paid for claims in future quarters. The representatives from the Victims of Crime Program are available to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Nix. Is there someone present from the Victims of Crime Program?
Good morning, Governor, members of the board. Michelle Morgando, acting coordinator for the Victims of Crime Program.
And Rebecca Salazar, Program Manager for Victims of Crime.
All right, thank you for being here. And this is obviously a devastating situation associated with what happened at the Route 91, and there is no amount of money that can ever properly compensate the victims that were injured as a result of, and killed in families, et cetera, as a result of that horrific massacre. So I guess I'd like a little bit more specificity and detail as to how you all are managing this fund, and a little bit more with regard to the anticipated requests from the fund.
Well, if you'd like the statistics that we provided, we have updated information regarding the number of claims that we currently have subsequent to the report and the amounts paid. We've also addressed with the National Center for Victims of Crime program, and this is a follow-up to the IFC meeting the other day regarding how the National Compassion Fund and the Las Vegas Victims Fund is treated with respect to the payment of benefits in our program. We requested and received a letter from Jeffrey Dion, who's the Deputy Executive Director for the National Center for Victims of Crime. I have a copy of that now if you would like me to summarize it or read it, and I'd be happy to leave that with Madam Secretary.
Yes, please.
All right, the letter is addressed to Ms. Salazar. This letter is to confirm that benefits paid from the National Compassion Fund, Las Vegas Victims Fund, and then my wording, also known as the GoFundMe, is not paid in compensation for any economic loss. Benefits from the Compassion Fund were designed to address an unmet need for recognition of the non-economic harm arising out of the Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting, such as pain and suffering or psychological trauma, which is not compensated by any other victims of crime program. And it's signed by Mr. Dion. I hope this provides an explanation or a follow-up. We did have questions at IFC regarding this. There are certain categories of benefits that are not payable under our program, primarily being those to compensate non-economic harm. Ours is designed to pay medical bills, counseling, travel expenses, lost wages, things that are documentable. And the way that the Compassion Fund is being treated, it's for non-documented expenses. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. Will you read that last sentence again?
Of course. Benefits from the Compassion Fund were designed to address an unmet need for recognition of the non-economic harm arising out of the Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting, such as pain and suffering or other psychological trauma, which is not compensated by other crime victim programs.
Okay, thank you. And I
Yes.
guess the bottom line for me is, as I said, there is no amount of money that can ever properly compensate anybody that has gone through this. So we have this fund, we have that GoFundMe, but my understanding is there can't be any coordination between the two. And so it may be that some victims may get more than others. Is that an accurate summation?
This is Rebecca Salazar. The protocol for how those funds will be distributed has not been finalized yet, although I think that'll happen next week. But my understanding of what they are planning on doing is those funds will go to people who, the families of the deceased or people who were injured and spent at least one night in the hospital. So everyone else that was present would be covered through our program for counseling, a minimal lost wage payment if they weren't able to return to work, and if any injuries that they sustained that didn't warrant a night in the hospital, those are the types of things that we would cover. The families of the deceased, we pay for funerals for them, and we have, and the people who were injured, we would take care of those medical bills.
I suppose I just want to make sure that those that are eligible to seek money from any fund are aware of what the process is so that they can take advantage of that, so that there's not a disadvantage to those who may not be familiar with what that process is. So is there an educational effort being made to make people aware of what they're eligible for and how they obtain those funds?
Governor, we are currently working closely with the Victims Resiliency Center, which is providing outreach services. We also are going to be employing 2 additional individuals within our office pursuant to a separate work program, which will be reimbursed by grant money. One of those individuals is designated to do community outreach. We've also, Ms. Salazar and I participated in a service announcement done in conjunction with the Resiliency Center that's to be broadcast on, I believe it's Clark County Television. So there have been, our website has been completely redesigned for the Route 91 shooting. All of our forms, information are available in English and Spanish, and provide information about how to contact our office as well as victims from California. There's a separate link for them. So we're providing as much as we can so that individuals know that within the 1-year filing period that we have, or it could be up to 18, that they can come to us in one of 3 ways to file a claim, either online at the Resiliency Center. We do have an employee there through all business hours to assist, or they can come to our office.
Thank you very much. Questions from other board members? Attorney General.
So it says that there's projected 14 million over the life of these claims, and I guess we're doing about 7 today. So that's an additional 7. Am I understanding that correctly, or additional 14?
The projections refer to over the life of the applications that we may receive. So, in general, from other mass events, the compensation program has received 25% of the applications from the attendees of those other events. So if that's what we received, that would be about 6,000 applications. So these projections are just based on over the life of the claim, so not necessarily over the next year, it could be over the next several years, what we expect to spend total is about 14 million.
And then it says that you expect to get some reimbursement. Do you have any idea, are we talking 25%, 50%? Just how much reimbursement do you think's available and expected?
The hope is that we get full reimbursement, but we're in the very early stages drafting our grant proposal. So we are putting in all of our costs into that proposal, and hopefully that'll be finalized within the next 6 months or so. But at this point, we don't have any dollar figures available. We're just requesting a full reimbursement for everything we spend on these claims.
Thank you.
Governor?
Yeah, Madam Secretary, please proceed.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies, so much for not only being here, but for what the center's doing. Really appreciate hearing that. I'm questioning or just asking if I can have a little information. The funeral expenses have been something that have been out there. We had a business in Las Vegas that has said they've paid for them. Clark County has indicated they have. So I'm just wondering, when the governor said you can't work together or you're not supposed to collaborate together, how are those being addressed? We need to make sure everybody's needs are met. But I know that there's a couple different funds, and that, again, one of the businesses had said they paid for them, and then Clark County said they have taken care of them. So I'm just curious if you know any results on the funeral expenses at all, how that's being handled.
I can speak to that. This is Rebecca Salazar. I personally been coordinating those payments. So with that company and with the other agencies that have funds available, it was just a matter of, us paying our portion and delivering the balance due to the other agencies and letting them keep going.
So you are able to coordinate that somewhat?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Wonderful. That's what I was just asking. So thank you, Governor, for allowing me that question. And again, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any further questions or comments?
I just have one more question. It's actually a little tough to make you guys out here, so this is, you've said this already, but can you explain, by way of example, what the Las Vegas Victims Fund will be paying for as opposed to
the way that from what we understand, and it's not finalized, I believe it's in its, if it hasn't closed, it is closing soon. Comment period, they've had 2 public hearings regarding how the fund is to be structured and what the payment levels are. From our understanding, this was patterned quite closely from the 9/11 Victims Fund and the Pulse shooting, the Pulse nightclub shooting. In fact, I believe the gentleman who coordinated both of those is assisting the 16-member commission here, who's in charge of administering the funds. But as we understand it so far through the public comment period, it's a graduated tier of payments depending upon the level of trauma. So if the minimum qualification is you must have been hospitalized, I believe at least one night, that's a certain lump sum payment, and then graduates up to those who were fatalities. Other than that, they haven't presented the final proposal yet, and I hope that answers your question. And Ms. Seltzer.
I can add something. The intention of those funds, as the letter that Ms. Morgando read, is to provide more of a pain and suffering type payment, not specific to the bills. The bills are what our agency would cover, so that's the difference. It's the intention of those donated funds are to provide more of a pain and suffering payment rather than a payment for a specific expense.
So it's not calculated as if the like a personal injury award or settlement where the damages are usually 3 times the medicals or whatever the formula is that's set. The category depends more on the level of injury and not so much what was expended as a result of the injury.
Okay, I think that clarifies it a bit. Appreciate it.
Anything else that you wish to present with regard to agenda item number 8?
No, sir, thank you very much.
And by the way, leave that little table speaker on or microphone. That really improves the audio, so thank you. So if there are no further questions or comments, the chair will accept a motion to approve the Department of Administration's Victim of Crime Fund fiscal year 2018 first quarter revenue report and recommendations for fiscal year 2018 second quarter anticipated expenses.
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved to approve. Is there a second?
Yes, Governor, happily will provide that second for the vote.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Second to the motion. Any questions or discussion? I hear none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Governor. Members of the board.
Move to agenda item number 9, which is a request for approval to pay a tort claim pursuant to NRS 41.036. Mr. Nix.
This item is for a claim for which the Office of the Attorney General recommends payment from the Tort Claims Fund. Representatives from the Office of the Attorney General are available to discuss the specifics of the claim and answer any questions the board members may have.
Good morning.
Good morning, Governor Sandoval, General Laxalt, Secretary Sagafsky. I am Cameron Vandenberg, Chief Deputy Attorney General. I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have about the case.
All right, will you just lay a brief record regarding the case and the recommended settlement, please?
Yes, sir. This case was filed several years ago, and it was originally a 100-page complaint with 13 causes of action against multiple defendants of the Department of Public Safety, Nevada Highway Patrol. Most of the claims were things like RICO, defamation, Fourth Amendment violations, a number of them. The ones that we dealt with towards the end were First Amendment claims. Those were the employment claims that came to our division, as well as a state trespass claim. We were able, through motion practice, to eliminate all but 2 of those claims. There were 3 plaintiffs, one of whom passed away during the litigation. The 2 remaining claims pertained to a First Amendment violation and the state trespass. Again, with another round of motion practice, we were able to obtain partial summary judgment on some other claims, and the court granted summary judgment in favor of the plaintiff on the First Amendment claim. We stayed the trespass claim while we proceeded to the Ninth Circuit to appeal that on the basis of qualified immunity and also the merits of the claim, and did not prevail at the Ninth Circuit. So this case is a little different than the other cases we've had in the employment area where we actually have a judgment in favor of the plaintiff. And so what's left to go to trial is just damages. So it's a little unique in the settlement aspect that we're not necessarily trying to predict what might happen with the jury in terms of liability. We're really just trying to predict what might happen in favor of damages. So we conducted some research in the case and found damage awards ranging from nominal to $1 million in similar types of cases. So at this point, the attorney's fees are projected to be over $100,000. And so through several settlement negotiations, we were able to arrive at the settlement amount of $225,000, $75,000 of which is for attorney's fees, and $150,000 is to the plaintiff. We also settled the state trespass claim that I referenced a moment ago for $20,000, which is obviously not before you. So we settled the entire case for about $245,000.
And I think it's important for the record, when you talk about nominal fees, if they'd recovered $1, they'd be entitled to every penny of their attorney's fees.
Exactly, and by the end of trial, that would probably be twice what we've settled for, so, or more.
And so having said all that, given the settlement, and I think it is a good settlement, you do believe that it's in the best interest of the state?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from any of the other board members on this matter?
No, Governor.
Bet you're happy to see this case get resolved.
I very much am, so yes, thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions, the chair will accept a motion to approve the request to pay a tort claim pursuant to NRS 41.036 in the sum of $225,000.
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Yes, Governor, I'll second that motion.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion? I hear none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you. Thank you. Next agenda item is number 10, approval of proposed leases. Mr. Nix.
There are 5 leases on the agenda, item 10 for approval by the board this morning. No additional information has been requested by any of the members.
Okay, I have no questions. Board members, any questions with regard to agenda item number 10?
None.
There's a motion.
I move to approve agenda item number 10, approval of proposed leases.
Attorney General has moved to approve the proposed leases contained in agenda item number 10. Is there a second?
I second that, Governor.
Secretary of State has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion? I hear none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. We'll move to agenda item number 11, approval of proposed contracts. Mr. Nix.
There are 51 contracts in agenda item 11 for approval by the board this morning. Contract number 3 has been withdrawn and will be revised and brought back to a future meeting. Contract 21 was contingent upon approval of a work program, which was approved by IFC last week. Contract 48 would normally have been signed by the clerk, but is being brought to the board for approval due to questions regarding the scope of work of the contract. Contract number 50 relates to the stale claim item D in agenda item 7. Members have requested additional information on the following. Contract 4 between the Office of the Attorney General and the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Contract 11 between the Department of Administration, State Public Works Division, and the Whiting Turner Contracting Company. Contract 14 between the Department of Administration, State Public Works Division, and Q&D Construction Incorporated. Contract 36 between the Department of Corrections and the University of Nevada, Reno. Contract 37 between the Department of Corrections and the Correctional Counseling Incorporated.
All right, thank you. We'll proceed with contract number 4, the Attorney General's Office Special Fund.
Good morning, Governor Sandoval, Attorney General Laxalt, Secretary of State Zagaski, Nicholas Trutanich on behalf of the Attorney General's office. To my right is Christian Schonlau, our CFO. This is a contract that the office is extremely proud of. It's a key piece of our statewide strategy to reduce the backlog of untested sexual assault kits in Nevada. The contract provides needed funding to Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for new forensic staff and outsourcing of sexual assault kits to help reduce the decades-long backlog of sexual assault kits in the state. This contract is funded in part by favorable settlements reached by the Attorney General's office to the tune of $1.35 million and approximately an appropriation from AB 97. This contract is complementary to a contract that this board approved in October with Washoe County and furthers the efforts of the Attorney General's office to find a statewide solution to the untested backlog in Nevada. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jutanich, and first, congratulations. I think this is a wonderful contract, and congratulate Attorney General for getting this done. So do you know where we are, given the prior contracts and with the assumed approval of this one, how much more we have to do to get caught up?
Sure. A key piece of this was AB 97 last session and the mandatory testing that was pushed by Attorney General Laxalt. Over the course of the last 3 years, we've appropriated grant funding, $1.7 million of settlement funding, and then, of course, the money appropriated in AB 97 and the additional $1.35 million pursuant to this contract. We are well on our way to a statewide solution. We're reducing the backlog, although the numbers that I have are only current from August 3rd of this year. We'll be getting new numbers at this Thursday's sexual assault kit working group, which is chaired by the Attorney General. I can say that in the last 2 years since testing began, we've done approximately 10 years worth of testing in those 2 years. So we're making good progress and we're well on our way to a solution.
Thank you. And not only have you made good progress, but it has resulted, hasn't it, in identifying individuals that otherwise may not have been found?
That's right. With each kit being tested, if there's hits to what's called CODIS, they get uploaded to a national database. And as of August of this year, there's been 11 arrests inside the state based on the testing that's been done so far. Of course, law enforcement expects that more perpetrators of sexual assault are going to be brought to justice and more cases are going to be resolved for victims and survivors of sexual assault because of this testing. So we're proud of that.
And you should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Any other questions or comments from board members on contract number 4? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next is contract number 11. And my understanding is this is associated with the UNLV Medical School. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor and members of the board. My name is Chris Schmitz, Deputy Administrator for the State Public Works Board. And this contract is with Whiting Turner Construction Company for the pre-construction design assistance services for the medical school at UNLV. Our intention with this contract was to get it through the process, to get this contract approved so that when the funding that's required from UNLV is sent to the state and is deposited in our account, then we would be able and positioned to start with the work. That's our intention here. And I don't know, I believe there are representatives from UNLV, and so I would want to hear from them as far as.
And let's just talk about it, because this is what I want to hear from UNLV is this SB 553 was the bill that provided the $25 million from the state to help fund the UNLV Medical School. There was a private gift of $25 million as well, and it's my understanding is that there is, I don't know if I want to call it a dispute, a disagreement with regard to which money comes first. Pursuant to the bill, Senate Bill 553, that requires the private money or the money coming from UNLV to be spent first and not the state money. And my understanding is from UNLV is that there may be a disagreement there that it is, the state money would be spent first. And I just want to get that resolved so that we can get moving with this medical school.
Chris Schmitz for the record. You're correct, Governor. The Senate Bill 553 does stipulate conditions, but it defers to to NRS 341. And NRS 341 is the bill that regulates that agency money or donor money spent ahead of state funding. So our intention would not be to act on this or do any work that would incur expenses until the agency money comes, and then we would spend that money first in accordance with NRS 341.
So pursuant to NRS 341, at least in this situation, the $25 million of private money would have to be spent first before a dollar of the state $25 million could be spent.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have some folks from UNLV that are here. If you would identify yourselves for the record, please.
Sure. Good morning, Governor Sandoval, members of the board. My name is David Fromer. I'm the Executive Director of Planning and Construction at UNLV.
And good morning, Diane Chase. I'm Executive Vice President and Provost at UNLV.
Members of the board, if I could offer some information related to that question. UNLV agrees with the reading of SB 553 and base NRS 341 requirements that the agency money is spent first, so there is no dispute from our perspective there. We did present to the IFC in October of 2017 with the State Public Works Division related to the project, another requirement of SB 553. The project at that meeting is defined based on really the full build of this first phase of a medical school education building and supporting facilities was estimated at about $230 million of base cost, with financing costs and other costs about $250 million. A part of the process that we're going through is we're very actively in the fundraising component of this project. In addition to the $25 million anonymous gift that came in during the session, another $14 million gift has been secured in the last 2 weeks or so. Our president and our provost and our medical school and development folks are working on additional gifts. And part of our process is with the project currently structured at a $225 million contribution from donor funds and $25 million from the state funds in SB 553. We're looking for a little bit more time for our donor agreements to form so that we have better certainty of the project funding coming in. And if it winds up coming a little less than that 250 or a little more, our interest is to hold off on proceeding on design on a project where the funding needs to be very closely aligned with what we proceed in design. We think it would be a very difficult use of donor funds to start design on a project where the funding winds up being more or less ultimately, and we have to go back and redesign the project in some way, and those donor funds have not been used to their fullest extent and capacity and benefit. So those are some of the items that we have on the table related to the project in general.
I would add just very similarly that our only concern at this point is not about which funds would be expended first, but really about the scope of the project, because we are not sure what the full scope is, and it seems premature to establish a particular design contract when we're not sure about the amount.
No, and I understand and appreciate that, and I also appreciate your acknowledgement. You know, we really don't have any discretion here as in terms of how that $25 million of state money is expended. But are you saying, would you prefer that we hold this contract if you're in this uncertain position?
We would feel more comfortable if we would hold on this contract for at least a period of time, yes.
Okay. Any objection from the state with regard to that? Gus, did you want to say?
For the record, Governor Gus Nunez, Administrator of Public Works Division. No, there's no objection on our part. As the only thing we've been trying to point out to UNLV is that we have some fairly, what I would call a steep inflation going on right now, and of course, the sooner the better. And like Chris indicated before, our intent is just to be ready to go as soon as they're ready to go. Some of the things that we could do during the schematic design would be to present, before we get into the full design of the projects, to present UNLV various options that they could do depending on where the funding comes in. Obviously, there's going to be a need to do a certain minimum amount of work in order to have an accredited medical school. Those things can be investigated, priced out, and so that the information will be in front of UNLV at the time that they have their funding more solidified in order to make decisions. And our recommendation to UNLV is and has been that some of this preliminary work needs to be done regardless of where the final project is going to be. And it is it would be part of what we typically do as part of our design fee with any professional. So there's some things that could be done that would not waste any money at this point, but and it would be beneficial for those decision makers to have that information in front of them when they go look at it, say, here's where with the funding, and trying to make those final decisions as to how much of a project they want to build right now. So, I understand their concerns, and we'll be glad to basically wait until they just make their final decisions on this thing.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nunez, and I'll honor UNLV's request to pool this, but would really encourage UNLV and Public Works to get together and perhaps have this more detailed conversation like the one that you just shared with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And again, thank you all. So that I just want to make sure I've got it confirmed on the record. It is your request to have this matter pooled, this contract?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So it was, Mr. Nix had referenced contract number 14 being held. I don't have any questions on that. Did any of the other board members have any questions? I know earlier I had, but not anymore. So we can move on then to contracts 36 and 37. Good morning. So I had asked this to be held only because it's good news with regard to the, I suppose, a second iteration of the Second Chance Act and how Nevada is the beneficiary of that. So please proceed.
Good morning. My name is John Barman, Deputy Director of Support Services for the Department of Corrections. I think that we are privileged to have Sheila Lambert work for our department and has been instrumental in not only pursuing this, but also in administering it. So I don't want to take away her glory here. This is a good thing for the state. And if you don't mind, I will turn the microphone over to Sheila.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sheila Lambert, Nevada Department of Corrections. For the record, we are always very excited to talk about the Second Chance Act grant. We're always very excited to tout our successes. These particular contracts, while the first one on 36 is for the University of Nevada, Reno, we do have a contract with both UNR and UNLV to do services throughout the state in terms of evaluation. What we're doing with the Second Chance Act is to reduce recidivism and thus victimization in the community. DOC. We've been very successful over year one. The UNR contract actually is an evaluation of programs and services, so it holds us accountable to the governor's reentry strategic task force and those objectives and the strategic priorities. It makes sure that we are focused on data-driven decisions. We have community partners who are part of the deliverable from UNR. Across the state from our various departments of Health and Human Services, DETR, many nonprofits, Attorney General's Office, and a number of folks who have come together to work with us. And so that's item 36 is actually you'll see another item that'll come up in January where you'll have 3 or 4 more contracts for us to continue with year 2. We were just recently awarded year 2 for $999,000. And would you like me just to go ahead into 37 as well?
Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Correctional counseling is moral recognition therapy. So in the Nevada Department of Corrections, working with the Pew Institute, LCB, many of those in the governor's office and other departments, we work to identify the number of programs within DOC that were not evidence-based, and those were eliminated. And what we did was work with the Council of State Governments, the National Governors Association, and identified those programs that focused on the majority criminogenic features. And so this moral recognition therapy is a new program, evidence-based. We're doing train the trainers throughout NDOC so we can have sustainability. So even after the grant funds are gone, we'll continue to be able to provide this program to the inmates to continue to support the reduction in recidivism.
Well, thank you, Ms. Lambert, and I was the beneficiary of a meeting with you, and I really want to congratulate you on the work that you've done, and it's going to take time, but I think the state is, and particularly the inmates, are going to be the beneficiaries of this and see a reduction in recidivism, which will benefit everybody. So this is really a compliment to you and Director Zarenda and everybody at the Department of Corrections that not only did you get the first round, but now moving to the second round.
Thank you. And one thing, we do kind of, every once in a while, get a comment as to why are we doing so much for inmates. And we are targeting those inmates with the assessments that the programs will help them. And really, this is for the state of Nevada in reducing victimizations. When we talk about recidivism, it's a big word, but what does it mean to moms, dads, and community members? And it means one less victim, and hopefully that would be one less victim in your family.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert, and that's what's important, is making this real. I mean, in terms of, at the end of the day, that's what the goal is to reduce victimization, but also put these men and women on a path where they can be productive members of society.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from board members with regard to contracts 36 and 37? I hear none. Thank you. All right, board members, any questions on any contract from 1 to 51? If there are none, the chair will accept the motion to approve those contracts, accepting contracts 4 and 11.
Move
Or
to
3, excuse me, 3 and 11. Right? Yes. Yeah.
Move to approve.
So Attorney General has moved to approve contracts 1 through 51, accepting number 3 and number 11. Is there a
There's a second, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 12, Master Service Agreements.
There is one master service agreement on the agenda, item number 12, for approval by the board this morning. No additional information has been requested by any of the members.
Any questions, board members? Hearing none. So a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved to approve the Master Service Agreement presented in agenda item number 12. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Governor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Madam Secretary has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. We'll move to agenda item 13, information item. Mr. Nix.
There were 32 contracts under the $50,000 threshold approved by the clerk between October 23rd, 2017 and November 17th, 2017. This item is informational only, and no additional information has been requested by any of the members. Any
questions, board members, on agenda item number 13? Let's move to agenda item number 14, which is State of Nevada Compact with the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California governing Class 3 gaming. Mr. Nick.
Item 14 is an information item on the First Amendment to the Tribal State Gaming Compact between the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California and the State of Nevada, terminating the slots-only compact and replacing it with amended compact for Class 3 gaming on Indian lands of the tribe pursuant to the Federal Indian Gaming Regulatory Act.
Any questions on agenda item number 14? There are none. Let's move to agenda item 15, which is another information item with regard to the Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management, Disaster Relief Account grant request. Mr. Nix.
This item is a notification from the Division of Emergency Management of intent to request an allocation from the Disaster Relief Account pursuant to NRS 353.2755. Pursuant to statute, state agencies and local governments can request a grant or loan through the Division of Emergency Management from the Disaster Relief Account if, because of the disaster, the local government is unable to pay for an expense from available funds. Applicants must submit their intention to apply no later than 60 days after the governor or the governing body of a local government determines an event constitutes a disaster. The division must then notify the Board of Examiners and the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Council Bureau of the intent. Within 18 months of the determination, an event constitutes a disaster, the state agency or local government must submit their final request to the Division of Emergency Management and the Department of Taxation, including whether the request is for a loan or a grant and the final amount of the request. The Division of Emergency Management and the Department of Taxation are required to review the request and submit reports to the Board of Examiners, who will make a recommendation to the Interim Finance Committee on the proposed amount and the determination of a grant or a loan. This notification is just the first step in this process. The application will come to the board for approval of a recommendation to the Interim Finance Committee at a later date. This notification is for the October 1st mass casualty event at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. You answered or made part of the record of what I was going to comment is that this is another agenda item associated with the Route 91 Music Festival. Is this number $3,784,271.35 the amount that we're being put on notice for?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, board members, any questions with regard to agenda item number 15? Let's move to agenda item 16, our another information item report with regard to the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Mr. Nix.
There are two information reports under this agenda item. The first is an informational report regarding lands or interests in lands transferred, sold, exchanged, or leased under the Tahoe Basin Act program, as well as a quarterly report on the status of real property or interest in real property transferred under the State Tahoe Mitigation Program, which are required pursuant to NRS 321.5954 and Chapter 355 Statutes of Nevada, 1993, respectively. This report is for the quarter ending September 30th, 2017. There were no activities under the Tahoe Basin Act, but there were 4 transactions under the Tahoe Mitigation Program, resulting in total proceeds of $112,523.50 for the Nevada Land Bank. The second report is on overtime paid for the first quarter of fiscal year 2018. Overtime pay and accrued compensatory leave accounted for a total of $15,288,237, or 6.21% of total pay for fiscal year 2018, a 30% increase from fiscal year 17. This is the first time that overtime has topped $15 million in a single quarter. The 5 agencies with the highest dollar amount of overtime and accrued comp time for the year accounted for 92.3% of the total. They are the Department of Corrections at $5.8 million, followed by the Department of Health and Human Services at $2.8 million, the Department of Public Safety at $2.2 million, and the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources at $1.9 million, and the Department of Transportation at $1.4 million. At the Department of Corrections, overtime and comp time are driven by the large institutions and medical personnel. Overtime and comp time for the year was greatest at High Desert at $1.3 million, followed by Southern Desert at $830,000, Ely State Prison $804,000, Northern Nevada Correctional Center $741,000, Florence McClure $580,000, and Prison Medical at $402,000, and Lovelock Correctional Center at $329,000. Those 7 equate to 86.9% of the total. Comparing the first quarter of fiscal year 17 to the first quarter of fiscal year 18, those budgets accounts changed as follows. High Desert increased $909,000, Southern Desert increased $510,000, Ely State Prison increased $196,000, Northern Nevada Correctional Center increased $417,000, Florence McClure increased $307,000, Present Medical increased decreased $13,000, and Lovelock State Prison increased $173,000. Pioche Conservation Camp and Three Lakes Valley Conservation Camp increased by more than $25,000. Overtime increased by a little over $1.2 million for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 17 to first quarter fiscal year 18, with High Desert $280,000, Ely $261,000, Florence McClure $199,000, and Southern Desert $162,000, accounting for 74.7% of the total combined increase in overtime for the quarter. By event code, the highest 4 causes accounted for 75.4% of the overtime. They were covering vacant shifts, hospital coverage, covering holiday shifts, and wildfire coverage. At the Department of Health and Human Services, overtime was driven by public and behavioral health, $1.3 million, primarily in Southern Nevada, adult mental health at $858,000, and the facility for the mental offender, $258,000, and child and family service at $880,000. Aging and disability services at $558,000, primarily at the Desert Regional Center. By event code, the highest 4 cases or causes accounted for 72.5% of the overtime. They were covering vacant shifts, covering 24-hour shifts, reducing backlog, and covering holiday shifts. The highest 5 by percentage of total pay for the year are the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources at 16.41%, followed by the Department of Corrections at 15.03%, the Department of Public Safety at 10.83%, and the Commission on Mineral Resources at 8.75%, and the Department of Veteran Services at 8.67%. The top 5 increases by dollar comparing FY17 to FY18 were Corrections, $2.6 million, Conservation and Natural Resources, $357,000, Health and Human Services, $328,000, Public Safety, $229,000, and Transportation, $192,000, which account for 105.2% of the total increase year over year. Conversely, only 5 departments decreased their overtime comp time accrual by more than $20,000 from FY17 to FY18. The Department of Veteran Services, $63,000, the Department of Taxation, $74,000, the Department of Business and Industry, $46,000, the Governor's Finance Office, $31,000, and the Department of employment training and rehabilitation, $20,000. As certain organizations have biennial overtime trends, such as the Governor's Finance Office, due to the overtime accrued building budgets in odd numbered fiscal years, the following compares those same 10 organizations to FY16. Corrections increased $3.3 million from FY16 to FY18. Conservation and Natural Resources increased $638,000. Health and Human Services increased $963,000. Public Safety increased $552,000. Transportation increased $534,000. Veteran Services increased $100,000. Taxation increased $24,000. Business and Industry decreased $6,000. Governor's Office decreased $3,000. Department of Employment Training and Rehab increased $4,000. The Department of Corrections, Health and Human Services, Public Safety, Conservation and Natural Resources, Transportation, Education, Motor Vehicles, as well as the Division of Minerals are on a 3-year trend of increase in overtime and comp time, while only the Department of the Military and the Department of Wildlife are on a 3-year decreasing trend. Most other agencies are stable or do not show a consistent long-term trend.
You may have made the best record ever right there on an agenda item, so thank you. Very thorough, so I appreciate that, Mr. Nix. Board members, any questions? Obviously, there's going to be some follow-up with regard to diagnosing exactly what's going on. I know with regard to Department of Corrections, they're still having a difficult time filling positions, even with the salary increases that we provided, so I know that's an ongoing challenge for them. So board members, any questions with regard to agenda item number 16?
None, Governor.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 17, which is public comment. Is there any member of the public present in Carson City that would like to provide public comment to the board? I hear and see none. Is there anyone present in Las Vegas that would like to provide public comment to the board?
There's nobody, Governor.
All right, before I take a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy New Year, and please take some time for yourselves and spend some quality time with your families. All my best to all of you.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, Governor, from Las Vegas.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Attorney General has moved to adjourn. Is there a second, Madam Secretary?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
All in the favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.